Hello and welcome to another Artis Opus video. Today we are not going to be specifically dry brushing anything or doing anything like that. I haven't hugely planned for this. We're going to be watching me learn how to use Liquitex Inks. You can probably tell from this bottle, and any loyal viewers will know, I have had some experimentation with Liquitex so far, and it did involve dyeing my foot magenta for 2 weeks. So it's safe it is safe to say that my experience with them so far has, I've been lacking, the inks have not been lacking, the inks seem pretty cool and they seem like they've got amazing potential. I'm gonna see where I can get to with these. I have my suspicions. First and foremost, how I expect to be using these is putting down a pre-shade or pre-highlight, like you can see on this axe where it's gone from like dark to light in the areas that I want it to be darker and brighter, and then putting some inks over the top, which is actually, I've done a dry brushing equivalent of that on these wings. Now that looks pretty cool, and I was pleased with how the technique went on these, but I felt the materials, the paints in that situation were lacking. I wanted this brighter. Maybe I should have been putting more paints in the mix underneath the inks or something like that. We'll get to find out. I also have these two rather cool beasties from the Verminlord Corruptor version of the Verminlord kit that I used in the Lockdown army. They're just asking to be stippled or airbrushed with light and dark points. Absolutely gorgeous shapes, sharp edges. These are some of my favorite weapons. So I'm going to put down some pre-shading on them, whether it's with stippling or the airbrush or something like that. Just jump in and experiment, and then you'll get to follow me on my journey and find out how it went. And by the end of it, I should be able to give you some actual useful advice on what I did wrong, what I cocked up, what went really well, and what I think the potential of these inks is in the future. So without further ado, let's jump in. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Pop your suggestions down below. If there's any more products you'd like me to use, then please let us know. And if you think I'm using these wrong or you've got some suggestions, I'll lap them all up. I'm always up for it, and I really love the engagement we get on the channel. I've definitely evolved as a painter as a result from comments from many, many people that we get. So yeah, let's jump in and see how this goes. As we've got a Skaven weapon, why not start out in Skaven-y colours? And we can also use the magenta to avenge the previous experience with it. So you're going to give these a proper shake. They really do agitate quite nicely. And then what I'm planning on doing, I think, is going from lighter section to darker section. We'll see if that's a good idea on one blade. And then if it's not, we'll try and do something different on the other blade. Yellow first. That is a 1 drop to 1 drop ratio, so 3 to 3 in this case. Nice. Test it on your palette, as I'm going to keep repeating. All painting is the same, dry brushing, airbrushing, whatever. Okay, so let's just rock on. There's nothing we can do here to, to delay any further. Awesome. That is a joy to use. Wow. So as with a lot of stuff, if you put in the pre-work, often when you get to what feels like it should be the significant stage, it doesn't last too long. And I'm going to end up with far too much yellow. We can always repeat the steps, so I'm actually going to do a couple of layers in order to really make this yellow, you know, not a pastel yellow, but yellow yellow. All right, that's pretty cool. That comes out beautifully. So 1:1 ratio, I'm just using Vallejo thinner. Yeah, good, okay. So just of note, this is taking longer to dry off than I thought it would. I might whack out the hairdryer while waiting for it to dry. I'm gonna see what happens if I just put a filter over the entirety of this one. So obviously the areas that are black, it should pick up on much less, and the areas that are closer towards white should pick up the greatest amount. Definitely has a little bit of a drying time. I was not expecting that because it's so thin, but I guess it's not alcohol based, so probably makes sense. All right, I'm getting the hairdryer out. Okay, so the yellow is fantastic. I'm gonna go for the same ratio pretty much with the yellow-green. The behavior changed a little bit towards the end of the go last time, and I think that's because I'd had some settling. 1, 2, a bubble. Great, really helpful. 3. I think that's because I'd had some settling in the airbrush pot, so maybe the thinner and the ink had separated slightly. it seemed to work. Like it went a little bit more thick towards the end, so I ended up kind of obscuring some detail here and putting down some drifts. Just a little bit heavy-handed of me. Probably should have gargled more. Wow, that's a cool colour. My God. All right, I'm gonna have fun with that one. Okay, so let's go for our not delicate one first. I'm gonna try and put this down either side. Over the yellow sections. Not too bad. Looking quite cool actually. And then here, which definitely has a bit more of a need for subtlety. Nice. It really sounds like a stupid thing to say, but because it's an ink, liquid, it really wants to leave the airbrush fast. It'll be the same with brush as well. Very wet, obvious statement about a more liquidy product. It's great though, it's really good. Didn't need nearly so much as I put in. What I will do though is it's very easy to think that I've got the full properties out of the paint that I need. A few layers will go a long way though, so actually maybe I could have an even more vibrant green if I'm just a little bit patient. Yeah, definitely. So multiple thin layers, absolutely a thing with this. You can't just put more down at once because you're going to end up with drifting or nasty properties. And of course, if this was going over a section that was white underneath, I'd be getting you know, even stronger properties there. All right, nice. Okay, so onto the purple. I'm really looking forward to this. Okay, this one seems stronger, so I will be proceeding with caution, not just because of my PTSD from last time. Oh, yeah, that's a bit of a dream, really. I need to be careful with this. I'm going to start in a middle-ish side section where I can't really go wrong. That's so strong. It's partially because of the colours I've chosen to go between, and maybe I should have mixed one with the other, but wow. Okay. It seems quite controllable. Let's rock on with the scary stuff. So here where I've got the bright, I want dark on the other side of it. I'm going to use angles extremely aggressively. All right. Looking pretty good with that, I think. Maybe a more blue purple would have been a better idea. I can always add some of that in, I guess. Oh, what an idiot. I should have masked that with my finger. Okay, whoops. That's a real shame. That will take some fixing. And we've got overspray here. Okay, so yeah, it's it flows really well and you need to be careful. It's not ruined, we will persevere. Okay, let's go for this side and we'll be far more careful with this and use my finger to mask more. If my finger's not moved back, I'm just using it as a hairdryer basically. Okay, yeah, so overspray is a real issue. Masking is absolutely necessary. See that I've got some creeping around the blade there. Real shame, but you know, we're here for learning. Good colors though, that's what's important. You know, we can get better, we can practice more. I've not got anything on the tip of my brush, so unfortunately I don't have any excuses. That's it's all down to me being clumsy or not thinking. Yeah, masking is definitely a thing where this is a strong set of colors. So it doesn't, you know, it doesn't defy physics doing this stuff with the airbrush. It can't creep around edges it can't get access to, so it's all about making sure that you've taken an extreme enough angle and that you've considered what's behind the area you're spraying, which is where I just screwed up with the overspray. All right, that's cool, we're learning. So rather than trying to fix these, what I'm going to do is just do a little bit more work on them, and then I'll pop on a time lapse and you'll get to see me trying to make a better go of this on the corner axe. Alright, so I reckon that's probably it for the airbrush testing, and then we can test them out in some other ways other times. Definitely dropping them into other paints is going to result in some, you know, turbo vibrancy upgrades to anything you've got going on. A couple of things to note: they come out quite shiny. If you're using them in shadows, they might look a little bit weird. They are awesome to work with, very bright. If I was more at, you know, more at ease with my airbrush at this stage, then I would have got a smoother result, but because they lay down pretty thin, you can fix anything quite easily. So really pleased with them. Obviously you saw me using angles and stuff like that to try and get the most out of the pre-shading. Here is the corner axe with a bit of both on them. Really pleased with that. 100% I think the strength of this type of stuff is to do that and then to go in with a brush, even dry brush, gentle buffing, and extend and push those highlights and those shades, add some nuance in there. I'd maybe be glazing blues into the deeper parts of that magenta to get it closer to a purple. And then what you will have seen is me quickly popping a dry brush over these, just a white dry brush with the XL, and then hitting it with the purple from below and the green from above and in the centers. That is great, it's really good. The more layers you put down, the more you will flatten things with them. So that's something that's worth considering. Unless you're very carefully putting down thin layers, you will, it won't, if you're trying to make the most of pre-shading underneath, so the brighter white sections, you will, with more stages, get everything closer together. So one way to get around that is to put in transparency aids to your paints. That is only going to be a thing with an airbrush because it dries as it hits the model, and it flattens things out really, whereas if you use them with a brush as a wash or a glaze, you definitely keep more of the personality of your pre-shading in your previous stages. As with pretty much everything I say on the channel, I think the real strength of a lot of stuff is not when you just use it on its own, it's when you start combining it with other materials, other techniques, stuff like that. So I've left the airbrush behind. It really helped me build up some nice volumes and sections, and I've just gone through to a one from Series S, and I've been glazing and I've been mixing the Liquitex glazes, going backwards and forth. I've actually involved some paints. I've only used 2 paints. I've used bright yellow green top tip. This matches with this very nicely, and the yellow hint too, and bright ivory that I've got here. Could use white, but the ivory's fine. And I'm kind of smudging around and playing with that, pushing the recesses with the purples. And I've taken, this was not quite right on its own, so I've mixed a little bit of Prussian blue in with it. You can see that on my palette. You probably see me working in the time-lapse. And yeah, this is looking pretty striking now. So what I'm going to do is just finish it off with a little bit of edging to particularly around this purple section. I've made some mistakes. Hold breath. There we go. So yeah, I made some mistakes around there, but I'm really pleased with how this has worked out. Definitely combining it with paints really unlocks a load of potential. So what I'm going to do is just finish this off with some tweaks. Going to do some little edge highlights. I've dropped the purple in these recesses. This is an ink, so it is very good at the bad thing of tidal stains. What I mean by tidal stains are those little stains. Some people call them tea stains, but you put down a wash or a blob of something, and when it dries, it's darker at the edges, like a tide mark or a tea stain. It does that pretty readily using these things. So it's not a wash, it's not been formulated for miniature painting. It is a traditional painting product. Therefore, it behaves like an old school ink in that respect. So do need to be aware of that. It also, it takes way longer to dry than I thought. And if you use it on itself, it sometimes reawakens the previous layer, and then you end up with, you know, clearing out patches here. Luckily, where it's happened for me is right in the very recesses of this section here. So I've managed to hide it in the shadows, but it was, yeah, it wasn't a great effect. Okay, I'm just gonna finish this off, polish it, get some crisp edge highlights on there, and that should look pretty baller. This is funky, this is a great color. And then the axe, which I've done the same thing on, that's got a bit more white in it. That's turned out pretty well as well. So definitely useful tools for unlocking crazy bright colors. That's turned out really well. Didn't mean to do 2 videos on power weapons in the same week, but it's ended up happening kind of by accident. Really love that effect. Obviously I've polished that with some normal painting, which isn't with the Liquitex inks, but as I've said numerous times, I don't think it's about using these products, you know, just on their own. It's not about painting an entire model black and white and then glazing it with Liquitex. It's about involving them with other stuff. I think they're super powerful, they're super interesting. The ways that I imagine myself using them the most in the future are perhaps dropping them into custom washes to add some vibrancy. I don't know if I could drop small amounts of them in with paint that I'm dry brushing with because they are so potent. I think that's a really interesting idea. Psyched to experiment with that. Let me know if you'd like to see me doing that with any particular models or any particular objectives in mind. And then, you know, power weapons, glazes, lighting effects, that type of stuff I think is really interesting. I would like to know how to combat the sheen. Any tips there, please let me know. They are a bit shiny. I might try putting some matte medium in or something like that. Or maybe if rather than normal thinner, I used a stronger percentage alcohol base, if I got hold of some isopropanol, IPP, and pop that in, maybe that would pull back the sheen, because often if you've got a high percentage of alcohol in stuff, it makes it look more matte when it's dried. Let me know your thoughts on the video. If you've got questions, if you've got suggestions on how to use them, I'm open to any feedback of that type. And let me know what type of models or paint jobs you'd like to see me using these paints on to experiment with in the future. I really enjoy, probably a little bit too much, trying out new paints. Really like it, find it exciting. And I quite like being out of my depth and, you know, getting to grips with something and learning my way to fit it with my style of painting too. So, hope you've liked the video. Please like, comment and subscribe. Pop down all comments and suggestions or criticisms or anything like that. We will read each and every one, and I'll catch you in the next video.